All right. Hello, and welcome back to the second episode of whatever the heck I'm going to name this idea of mine. Um, Cooking with me, cooking food wise, I don't know. This is episode 2 of the cooking series, I guess. And today I am going to make some smoked pork chops with an apricot bourbon glaze. So I'm going to try to do my best to try to kind of pull this off, but I'm going to walk you through my steps on what I do and try to kind of put this together. Again, just kind of using things that are in the house already, so not really going out and getting anything for this one. To be fair, I just had a handful of items that kind of worked for me that were just kind of available so that I could do that this time around. So while I do that, I am going to go ahead and grab some seasoning, which I probably should have done before I started chatting with you guys, but that's okay. You guys can look at the back of my head for a few moments here while I try to figure out what it is that I have available to me. There you are, I think. And it is empty. All right. Well, my salt and garlic pepper is empty, so I'm going to have to do a slightly different process here than I was originally hoping for. Um, so just like that, we're going to go ahead and pivot just that quickly here. Now, what I was looking for was a salt, pepper, and garlic mixture. I don't have any pre-made, so I'm going to do minced garlic, salt, pepper. So together, I'm just going to go ahead and, well, rub them together and make a pretty quick little steak blend here for these pork chops. Now, I am going to go ahead and smoke these pork chops. So I want a very, very minimalistic sauce or seasoning, I should say. Very minimalistic seasoning just so that I can actually get the smoke flavor more than anything out of this. So that is what I'm going to go ahead and do right now. Unfortunately, when I have to do this, though, it usually means I have to run these salt and pepper grinders for a super long time. So bear with me here in the next few moments. I apparently was not prepared enough for this adventure here. Now, as much as I like these salt and pepper grinders, like sometimes I really just want to throw a bunch of freaking peppercorns together and mash them all. Um, Sometimes I feel like the peppercorns do take a little longer to grind in these things, but ultimately it gives me that fresh ground pepper flavor, which I really, really like. So I'm going to go ahead and continue to do that. Now, I just eyeballed a pretty one-to-one type mixture here. Maybe a little heavy on the pepper itself. But now I'm just going to go ahead and kind of mix that in here a little bit, and I'll kind of get this into camera view in a second. But you want a good mix of the salt crystallization along with the minced garlic and black pepper. Yeah, so you kind of want something a little bit more like this. I'm going to kind of work with the camera here a bit so you guys can see that a little bit more. There we go. So now to that, I'm actually going to add just a tad bit more pepper, just so I can kind of show you guys what's happening here. Now it looks like it's actually going to pretty much drain the rest of my pepper that's in this shaker or grinder. And give that another hand mix here really quick. There we go. That's more or less the look I am going for. So now you can see a pretty even mix between the garlic and the pepper. Slight crystallization of the salt itself. You just kind of want to see it glisten more or less. Then also kind of have like a secondary view. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is go ahead and start prepping our pork chops. Now these were already previously frozen. I was lucky enough to get these from a friend that they actually butchered a pig, and they were nice enough to share some of these with me. So I'm going to grab a couple paper towels, just kind of give them a quick pat dry. Just try to get some of that seasoning to kind of sit on there, kind of pull a bit more of that moisture out. It's kind of my hope on that. All right, going back at that. Nice pat dry. Now these are slightly frozen still in the middle, but that's okay. We're still going to run with it. I'm running this on a pellet smoker today, and I'm kind of going to do more of like the reverse steak method itself. So I'll smoke this out, get that flavor in, and then I'll kind of finish it off in a cast iron skillet. So we have tons of flavor, and then it can kind of take care of that last minute or last second thawing process, kind of in that low and slow type of cooking style. Now with this, I am running it at 225. Again, just maximum smoke flavor is what I'm looking for. Of course, if you're not familiar with how to run a pellet smoker or what the smoking process looks like, I recommend looking up Traeger app. The Traeger app is pretty good for this kind of stuff too. Kind of familiarize yourself with it. I'll kind of give you some pointers along the way, but again, my side's more of like putting food together, making it work, less about the technique and what and how to make it, I guess. Just kind of putting things together here. All right. Some new fresh gloves, just so I can get my hands into that seasoning. And we're going to get rolling here. Now I'm going to generously coat these here. Now typically I would add some kind of a binder or something along those lines for this, but today I'm just going to go in for a quick, easy smoke on this. Give them a slight pat, a little bit of a rub. So a flip there, a little flip. Now this is going to be nice. Now these are pretty thick. Nicely chopped pork chops. Again, this was butchered by a friend. Any pork chops will work, you know, it's not like you need to go out and get specifically butchered pork chops or anything like that. I mean, if you find some on sale, you want to use some of that. I mean, that's all what you can do here. All right, perfect. Now I'm gonna try just to kind of pat some of this leftover kind of seasoning that I can get off of the board. Kind of just pat some of that into the fat cap there so that I can have a little bit of flavor as well. It's not very much, I didn't make very much seasoning, so it's all right. All right, there we go, just like that. So as you can see here, pretty easy, pretty straightforward. I'm gonna let that kind of sit for a second, and I'm actually gonna do one extra step. Now, because I am noticing that the fat caps are pretty big, I'm just gonna give them a little bit of a score. So that hopefully you can have a little bit more of that flavor kind of settle in. That one's okay. want a little bit more of that flavor to kind of come through later. Just some gentle scores. Again, these two are okay, so I'm going to leave those, let those be. All right. There we go. Now, next step, I'm just going to go throw them on to the smoker themselves. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I will be off camera for a few. You should still be able to hear me, so I'll be right back. All right, outside, check. The grill is at 226, which is perfect, nicely preheated. So I'm going to go ahead and just pop these on. Perfect. Now, I mentioned that some of these are frozen, so I'm familiar with my grill, so I just went ahead and put those on to the hot spots. So if you're familiar with your grill, you know enough about it to know where your hot spots are. I recommend putting those that are just slightly not defrosted, perfectly defrosted, to kind of put them on there to kind of give you that extra little bump or a little extra help to kind of get you there. And I just kind of clean up my space here a little bit before I get into the next step. So while that's going, I'm going to go ahead and make the glaze. Now, it's probably too early to start making that, but that's okay. Everything else on this dinner is actually going to be super quick, super easy. I may even have to end up pausing the video just if I can get that far enough, just depending on what timing it looks like and how that works out. All right, so what I'm going to do is pull out another cutting board and start prepping my apricots. Yeah, that's right, apricots. So what I'm going to be doing is an apricot bourbon glaze. Bring those over. Now, again, very fortunate. Same friend also gave me these apricots. They are homegrown. We're also defrosting today. These look in much better shape than those pork chops. So let me get rid of some of that ice. Now with these, what I'm going to do is pretty much just chop them up kind of into smaller bits. Typically for a glaze, you'd want to use something that's pretty heavy in your sugar and content and very, very minimal actual fruit in it, typically is what you end up going with. But I don't have an apricot glaze or an apricot jam, so I'm going to use the fresh apricots and kind of work my way into it a little bit. And hopefully I can create something that makes sense and that's actually pretty good. So I'm just going to give these a nice chop. Again, I'm just trying to break this up a little bit more or less, so that we have more of that like consistency. I'll probably end up having to strain this later, but for now, this is what I'm going to be doing. Perfect. Not making very much of this, so I am going to only use about this much on that. My next step is to also get roughly about the same amount of brown sugar. So I'm going to be testing this out more as like a 1-to-1 type of mix. So that's kind of what I'm going to be going for. Actually, I'm going to use a different bowl for that. So just kind of eyeballing here some of that sugar. One more scoop just for funsies. But I think that should pretty much get me where I want to be. Next step, I'm going to go ahead and let that pan warm up. And I'm going to throw that in here at that point as well. But I do want to talk about my bourbon of choice for the night. Maker's Mark whiskey. They don't pay me, but I drink it, so that's why I have it. Again, it's all about having something at home and making use out of it. So typically, actually, whenever I've used any kind of bourbon, glazed or any kind of bourbon in my food, I actually end up using Maker's Mark. It's actually typically why I end up having the big handle. Not because I drink it that much, but because I really just use it for everything. And it's a good go-to. So it tastes good, so I use it. That's kind of my thing here. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and use this time around because I have it. It's here. It's available. And it's a preference. So why not use what's available to you? If you don't have bourbon, leave it out. Honestly, it's more of an enhancer at this point than a necessity for this. Again, if you have jam, an apricot jam, you can use that instead. I'd probably cut out the sugar at that point as well too. Use that jam, a little bit of water, kind of stir that around, maybe some lemon juice. Anyway, there's all kinds of recipes online that you can go ahead and find in order to go ahead and do that. So I'm not going to go ahead and let you know what to do on that because there's probably better things out there than just me trying to throw things together. Now I am just feeling this pan currently. And I'm actually going to go ahead and rotate us now over here. There we go. Let's see if I can fix our camera lengths here. Perfect. So now I'm going to go ahead and rotate us on this side so we can go ahead and see the countertop. And I'm just going to let this get a little bit on the warmer side. Now, because there's a little bit of moisture in the peaches, I'm going to go ahead and drop the sugar in first. Then I'll allow the moisture of the peach to kind of come in. I'm going to add just a little bit of a lemon juice, like a concentrate in here as well. And then I'm going to go ahead and, based off of the feel of that, kind of go off of what's there, what's available, how much moisture I have, do I need to add any water, that type of thing is what I'm going to be doing next. So as I'm waiting for this here to kind of warm up, now keep in mind I don't want it too warm, I just want it to be warm enough to kind of get going, because once you get started, the last thing you want to do is burn this sugar. And then all you're going to end up is with a caramelized glaze instead, which can be good, can be delicious. Not always needed. I'm going to go ahead and find myself a whisk. Just to kind of break up some of these brown sugar chunks. There's kind of a crystallized crystal here. So I'm going to just toss that to the side. Continue to break up these chunks in here. Again, I'm just kind of waiting for the heat to kind of come in on this. Another chunk there of caramelized brown sugar. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and drop those apricots in. Now, if you've ever made like a ham glaze or a honey glaze or anything along those lines, you'll notice that a little bit of moisture goes a long way once you apply heat to the sugar. So that is what I'm going to do, is just slowly apply this heat. As you can see, it already kind of melted in here. Kind of continue to kind of work its way in, kind of muddle this a little bit here. See if I can get as much of this to break up as possible. Now, some of the skins I probably should have got rid of, but next time, I'll go ahead and get that taken care of. And sorry about the baby in the background. Like I mentioned in episode 1, this is more or less cooking at home and making everything work for us. Using everything that we have in the house to keep us fed over the next couple of months. And to really just kind of hit home, like, you don't need to go to the grocery store for every single recipe. You don't need to go to the grocery store to make something every single time for food. You don't have to follow a recipe to the T. You can kind of figure those things out little by little, more or less on your own. It's just kind of going about that and trying to make this all kind of work here. So that moisture looks pretty good, actually. I'm actually pretty happy with that. Even to the point where I may end up adding some extra brown sugar later. So like I mentioned, just a quick dash of lemon juice. I'd say maybe about half a squeeze of lemon juice, maybe. And a little bit of bourbon. Say half a shot or so of bourbon. Just kind of want to get that flavor profile in there. There we go. Now I'm just going to continuously whisk this. Now the important thing here is you want to cook out the bourbon flavor now at this point in time, right? You're going to take out the alcohol because that'll evaporate, but that flavor itself will actually stay in there. It's the alcohol that will actually evaporate and get out. So we're just going to go ahead and keep on stirring this here. There we go. Now, if only you guys could smell this. The smell is already just delicious. Now, I can tell that I'm actually going to need more brown sugar. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Kind of get another about half amount of what I had last time. Just to give me a little bit more volume here. There we go. Now when you get that bourbon smell with the sweet and smoky notes of the bourbon, that oak cast, all that kind of comes out so much right now. It pairs extremely well with each other. Delicious. Again, one of the reasons why I like using bourbon, Maker's Mark bourbon, when I make my food. Always kind of get that nice charred oak smell to it. I don't really know if they use oak, but it's at least the note that I get. Now, I can still smell the alcohol kind of burning out in here, so I'm going to let this kind of continue to go. I'm going to turn that down so it can simmer a little slower. Oh yeah. So it's not quite simmering yet, but I'm going to let that be. And I'm going to get our second pan going. Timing's a little off here today, but that's only because the smoker really needed additional time with that process itself. But I'm going to go ahead and make us some mashed potatoes. Some delicious Bob Evans microwave mashed potatoes. Again, this is kind of just given to us, so that's why we're using it. It's not something I normally would buy. If I was in like an absolute pinch, I'd buy this, but usually if I'm in an absolute pinch, I'll be using instant mashed potatoes instead of regular mashed potatoes or like pre-made mashed potatoes like this. Again, it's not typically what I would end up doing, but use what you have at home. That's what's important here. I am looking for a spoon for the mashed potatoes. Okay. Bringing in all that moisture from those mashed potatoes, kind of throwing that in here. All right, that's enough. I don't need every drop. Give that glaze another spin here. There we go. Second smell, a lot better. You can still smell that bourbon alcohol in there, but it's a lot less strong. The fumes are a lot less prominent. So we're going to kind of let that continue to sit there for a second. Toss this out. And of course, we're not just going to let that sit there, those potatoes by themselves. I'm going to be adding a little extra. I don't have regular milk, I have a little bit of oat milk. I'm really just adding a little bit of extra moisture in there just because it's already a pre-made product. And I'm cooking on the stovetop, so I'm just going for a little bit of moisture, not necessarily flavor with that. If you have regular milk, I recommend using regular milk, or if you have like even heavy cream, you can use heavy cream. You can pretty much do whatever you want with it, although heavy cream will make it much thicker in general. Going with a healthy spoonful of garlic. Should be enough for those potatoes there. And throwing in some butter. I happen to have, I don't know, about this much worth of butter that's been sitting on the counter, so I'm just going to toss that whole block in. Probably going to end up being a little bit much, but that's okay. All right, stirring that bourbon sauce again. There we go. Now we're starting to transition to a very, very sweet smelling product here. we're just kind of continuing that smell here, or that stir, I should say. In here with the potatoes, give them a good mix, work that butter kind of down so it melts sooner than later. Kind of work in all of that new moisture that we just added. Now, of course, we are going to add some pepper to that mix as well. But before I do, I kind of have to fill up my shaker here. You gotta be smarter than the shaker here, and apparently I'm failing at the moment. There we go. Garlic pepper. I'm just gonna add just a tad bit more. You can see there, baby is starting to grow her lungs, starting to figure out what she can do with them. Sounds like I'll be having we'll be having tons of fun with that here soon. Alrighty. Another stir here for the sauce, and you can see it's already starting to get more of that thick, saucy feel to it. And that's exactly what I want. And keep turning this down just a little bit again, looking for more time on the stove to kind of cook out that alcohol content. Because the last thing you want to do is to go in for a mouthful of this delicious glaze and it's just alcohol flavor. Like, that's really the last thing you want to do. If it happens, it happens, you know, but next time you learn. You give it a little time. And if you're thinking, oh, that's obviously a statement that he made because he messed it up the first time. I've messed this up plenty of times. I've had to throw away a lot of bourbon and a lot of sugar making glazes this way. As a matter of fact, this is the first time I've made like an apricot glaze like this or any kind of like fresh fruit. I've done actually a cranberry before. That turned out really well, but you don't really necessarily keep the cranberry in there. So now I'm going to continue to let this kind of go for a few more moments, and then I'm going to start taking out the bigger chunks with this strainer here. Actually, I'm going to bring this up just a bit more. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and pull these chunks out of this with the strainer. So just kind of letting it go. Color's starting to turn now. It's like dark orange color now. Yeah, I'm trying to remember where I have my lids. Try to keep some of that moisture in those potatoes there. Now, some folks will do cornstarch too. You can thicken it up with some cornstarch. If you have it and you'd like to use it, by all means, go ahead and do so. I don't think I have any. I'm kind of thinking about that right now. I don't. So that's why I'm not going to use any. But normally, if I had it, I'd add a little bit to it. That almost looked like some cornstarch, but I'm pretty sure it's powdered sugar, so I'm just not going to go in that direction. All right, I was corrected. It was actually baking soda, so really good thing I didn't go in that direction because that would have been really bad. There we go. Now I'm starting to get this thick glaze-like consistency. Just a little bit longer. I'm just getting just a slight hint at the very end of that alcohol taste or smell. As soon as that finishes burning off, we're going to go ahead and transition to the strainer here and start kind of taking some of these chunks out of here. And continuing to move this around so it doesn't caramelize on me. That's the last thing I want right now, and to have to start all over. Smells good, huh? Thank you, thank you. Beautiful. Look at all of this. All right, let that kind of set for a second there. Move these potatoes around again. This pot is not even warm yet, but I am actually starting to get some steam out, so I lied. It's warm enough, apparently. Ooh, and I'm already getting some of that garlic potato smell. And back to my glaze. Yeah, there we go. So now you can kind of see it's starting to get a little bit more of that glazy-like consistency here. And that is exactly what we want. And surprisingly, the fruit's actually breaking down a lot better than I thought it was going to. I bet when I start straining this, I'm probably just going to end up getting mostly the skins out, probably, is what my guess is. Also, I probably should have gone for a smaller saucepan, but it's all right, we're already here. Again, just kind of using the strainer to kind of strain all of these little bits and pieces here. Just kind of get a little. Oh yeah, that's better than I thought I was actually going to end up having, so I'm already happy. So now I'm just going to go ahead and go in, try to get as many of these chunks out as I possibly can. Again, even if I don't get all the chunks out, I'm really not going to care. This is delicious. As you can see, kind of coming out, it's more of like a syrup consistency than like a watery consistency. And that is more or less what you want and what you're looking for out of that. Just kind of continue to agitate this because it is just so slow coming down that strainer. Get every bit of that deliciousness out of there. And just as I expected, most of the skins that I'm seeing here at this point. Bring it in for another couple scoops here. And again, just constantly agitating this. Now it's time, I'm just going to give a quick agitation just to make sure that we don't end up caramelizing down here. Last go around, I felt like this is more just a couple of the chunks that were left over, but just that final process there. Oops, I kind of messed up. I wanted to actually scoop that out, not into the sauce there, so I kind of gently, there you go. Now that is very, very yummy. So now I'm going to kind of put this over here and show you guys this delicious glaze. So now you can see I have this nice, thick, yet thin consistency in this glaze. And like I said, this is going to be, Take that off the heat now. Kind of let that kind of get going. And in the process, I am going to go ahead and get started with warming up my cast iron. Which unfortunately, it looks like the last time I used this, I did not do a very good job of cleaning it. So unfortunately, we're going to have a dirty cast iron going into today's dinner. These mashed potatoes are starting to loosen up here. You notice that when I first put them in, they were super tight, didn't want to go anywhere. Far more loose now. Loosey-goosey. Get as much of that excess off of there. Those are going to be done here pretty soon. Turn it down just a tad bit more. Kind of firing this up a little bit. Now, because I'm already here and I'm feeling kind of inspired at the moment, I'm going to take an extra step in this process here. I'm actually going to add the extra bit of those apricots in here. Just to kind of give me that flavor profile. Get as much of that deliciousness as I possibly can out of there. So I have my preserves here. Pour myself about an ounce or so. A little bit of bourbon. Kind of muddle that all together here. Turn that pan down because it's already starting to warm up. Matter of fact, I'm just going to turn it off right now. All right, folks. Unfortunately, my iPhone decided to tell me that I was out of memory. So, of course, typical thing, I have to go ahead and get that squared away and taken care of here. But now quickly, I am going to get you guys back on frame here. There we go. Now, when I left you guys, I was actually in the middle of making... Sorry, I'm playing with this thing here too much, try to get what I'm looking for. I was in the process of making a drink, actually. So just found my very nifty Maker's Mark. You can't really see that there, but my very nifty Maker's Mark jar here. Again, this is my preference. I'm not sponsored by them by any means. Wink, wink, Maker's Mark. If you want to sponsor me, by all means, get in touch. Now, I kind of muddled this up already a little bit, and then I decided I'm going to add the strainer to that. That is what I'm going for. I guess you guys can't see this anymore, so let's see if I can get back into your frame here. A couple dashes of bitters. I have my ice. I'm going to grab myself just a splash of water. Myself a good little shake there. Get rid of that spoon. Grab myself some fresh ice. Now I just got to work. All right, not all brilliant ideas are good ideas. Sometimes you got to work for them a little bit. But if it was easy, everyone would be out here doing it, right? Continue to kind of shake that through here. Okay, I'll pop this off here. Scrape off some more of this fruit so that hopefully I can get a good finish here. Another stir, try to get some of that fruit out of the way there. There we go. Let that ice do some of the straining itself. Going for a nice taste there. It's actually pretty good. Better than I was expecting it. Not that I wasn't expecting it to be good, but there you go. A little impromptu drink, just something to add to what we just made. It's a great little addition here. All right, I'm going to finish that here. Kind of set that to the side. Check out my mashed potatoes one more time. Oh yeah, now we're there. Shutting off the mashed potatoes. At this point too, if you wanted to add some cheese or make it cheesy, you definitely could. I already put plenty of butter in here, so I'm not going to go ahead and add any additional calories to that. Move that off to the side. Now that's off. I'm just going to let that residual heat kind of continue to work its way through that glaze there. Another bit of my little drink there. Next step is I am preparing my olive oil dripper here. And by olive oil, I mean avocado oil. Just using some regular good old-fashioned avocado oil here. Baby's starting to get a little fussy, so I gotta get moving here. Move this out of my way over here, so I don't need that there anymore. Going to clean up some of my work area, so that I can introduce the next step, which is the pork chops. Getting my tongs ready. All right, that's just about ready there. Pour some of that olive oil in here now. All right. And of course, because we just put that in there, we're going to open up a window because it's always smart to do so. But I'm also going to go out and grab my pork chops. Now, they've been in there for roughly about half hour. Well, basically since we started. So I'm going to go grab those, and I'll be right back. You can temp them if you'd like. 125 is normally what I would end up taking something out like this, just so I can finish off the last 20 or so degrees. In the frying pan. But since I'm in a hurry, I'm going to kind of use them as is. And in all reality, they all kind of feel in that medium well type range. So I'm just going to pop those off, turn the smoker off. Coming back here, coming back to frame. Now you can't see it, my lady here, but she had this giant smile on her face as soon as she saw those pork chops walking in. I'm going to show you guys kind of what those look like. A little bit of the pink from the smoke itself. As you can see, they're bouncy, they're tender. These are going to be delish. Starting off with that fat cap. Now that first one I did like a man. I regret it. It was hot. I'm using the tongs this time. You can tell those serrations did a little bit, not a lot. It's exactly what we were going for. And this pan is hot, but it's not hot enough. I'm turning it up just a tad bit more. Now the smell off these pork chops is delicious. One more, but I'm not going to overcrowd it. In the meantime, I'm just going to let you guys listen to this here while I take a drink. All right, give that a nice little flip here. I'm going to move this over some of that avocado oil on that other side there. Get that nice crust going here. And of course, you always want to practice safe cooking. Always make sure you temp your food. I'm already at 170 on these. I'm more than well done. I've actually overdone it, actually. This one's in that 156 range. 150 range. So these are actually just about ready to rock and roll. So what I'm going to do is get this last one kind of rolling here. Start getting these off. Add some of that oil over here to that new pork chop. These two off, or these three off, I should say. Now I'm going to work on that here. And I kind of messed up that crust right there a little bit already. Now off camera, I'm just going to go and grab a quick sheet of foil, and I'm just going to do a loose tent for this. I don't want this completely covered. 134. So that one was probably one of the most frozen ones. Got a few more moments here. Let that crust finish. All right, I'm gonna let this one kind of continue. I got to take care of some smoke here before the alarm goes off. So I'm gonna go ahead and continue the video after I've let these rest for about 15 or so minutes. Then I'll go ahead and continue the video, kind of spice everything, show you guys what that looks like, and then go from there. All right, I will be right back. All right, friends, now that I got the smoke under control, it's been about 10-ish, 15 minutes, and I'm glad I took that time to go ahead and do that, because by the time I looked up from the cooking process, there was just a solid cloud in here, and I knew that if I didn't go ahead and control some of that, I was either going to set off an alarm or just, in general, just make a very, very bad situation. Not that I would have caught anything on fire, but just nothing was worse than just having like that smell of oil just kind of linger, and it's just nasty. But I'm going to go ahead and start prepping or plating the mashed potatoes, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut up the pork chops and show you what that looks like here in a second. So while we're doing that here, I'm going to turn my back to you guys quickly, taking my plates out of my sink. Again, remember, this is what I do to warm these plates up. We're dealing with a little baby on that other end. You can't really see it right now, but we may or may not be able to eat as soon as this is ready and hot, ready to go. So just warming up those plates really help kind of retain that moisture. Perfect. Bring that around. Give these potatoes a final stir. There we go. Those mashed potatoes look delicious. If anything, they probably could have been sweated out just a tad bit more, but that's all right. Do prefer my mashed potatoes to be a little thicker, but again, kind of had a lot going on, so I just didn't pay as much attention as I normally would have, and I covered them, which normally makes it so they end up retaining a lot more moisture than I normally would have wanted. All right, so now I'm actually going to bring the camera off of my face and kind of come down. That way you guys can go ahead and see these pork chops. I'm going to grab my knife. Look at these pork chops. See right here? See that deliciousness? Now I'm just going to try to look for that bone here. I'm going to cut alongside that bone. And then I'm just going to give these a nice chop. And as we can see here, I have that nice chop here. Put that across. That bone there. We've got a second one going. And again, just kind of finding where that bone is, kind of cutting around it. This one I'm going to give a little bit more of a angle this time. I'm definitely cutting in the wrong direction here. Just so you guys can see the beautifulness of this pork chop here. So I let that kind of fall apart on me. Juiciness on this is just absolutely superb. Now I'm going to go ahead and just add just a little bit of that to add a flavor to the mashed potatoes, because why not? Cover that with my loose foil. Move this out of the way so you guys can see more when I bring in that glaze. And with my apricot glaze here, it's a little bit cold. Unfortunately, looks like I waited just a tad bit too long on this process here. Yeah, it's just a little bit too cold, but you know what? We are going for it. So now, normally this should have been that nice syrup-like consistency and not this like jam-like consistency, but that's okay. We are just going to make do with what we have. And if it wasn't for the smoke, I probably would have had this nice and ready to go, but that's all right. Next time, life lessons. Get that worked in nicely. And there we have it. Nice honey glazed pork chop with a butter garlic mashed potato. And technically we had to add the smoked in there as well because it is on the smoke side. Didn't have any vegetables to kind of throw into this, so this is what we're going to do with that. But for the most part, this is where we are. Now, just because everyone apparently does this in the Instagram world, just going to grab a little bit of that mashed potatoes with some of those drippings, and a little bit of that glaze. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That hit every box I was looking for. Sweet, it's tangy. You can taste that bourbon in there. You can taste the smoked flavor in there as well. The garlic and the mashed potatoes comes through. And that's my cue that it's time to go. Till next time, see you guys later.